Is this the end for the Grizzlies Young Core? Imagine going from 2 consecutive seasons where you finish as the 2nd seed in the West to being the bottom in the conference. Well, this is what the Memphis fans are having to live through.
This is a team that is considered a title contender when Ja Morant is on the court. With him off the court, these dudes are winless.
From bad trade decisions to off-the-court drama, today we're going to see how they went from one of the top teams in the league and a top seed in the West who was absolutely destroying everyone on their path to getting bullied by every single team that they meet. Everything first clicked for the team in the 21-22 season. Their young core had a couple of years before that to get into shape, and with Steven Adams' addition that offseason, they had just gotten the veteran presence that they needed to take that extra step towards success. It just seemed like every single player knew what he had to do. They had a great defense with the likes of Jaren Jackson Jr., who would go on to win the Defensive Player of the Year award the following season. Then you had Dillon Brooks, and man, hate him or love him, you gotta hand it to him that his defensive efforts are some of the best in the league. So much so that he actually was named to an all-defensive team last season. On the offensive side of things, you had multiple guys pitching in to carry this load. From the 2 defensive specialists mentioned before to other guys like Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones, and Brandon Clark, as they all averaged double digits in scoring over the course of the last 2 seasons. And how can we talk about the Grizzlies, their success, or their downfall without talking about the man who's the face of this squad? I'm talking about none other than Mr. Ja Morant himself. He would probably deserve an entire video on his own. From Ja's rise to superstardom, then his self-sabotage and falling down to the depths of the NBA world is really something that needs to be studied. The 2nd overall pick from the 2019 draft was greatly overshadowed by the Zion hype that dominated the NBA when he was just starting. To everyone's surprise, he would go on to be the Rookie of the Year that season and start cementing his place as one of the best young players in the league. This would continue on as he would quickly settle himself in the role of the leader of this young squad, averaging nearly 30 points per game in his 3rd season. Oh, and how can we talk about him without mentioning his electric playstyle? Every single game, the entire NBA world held its breath, as it was expecting to see another explosive dunk from the young Phenom. No week went by without one of his dunks figuring in the top 10 highlights featured on ESPN. He would go on to have 2 consecutive All-Star selections as the Grizzlies would break the 50-win barrier in 2 consecutive seasons. He was everything that the media wanted. A new young American star who shined with his explosiveness just as the European ones were starting to take over. He was promised to a great future as he was surrounded by the perfect team for him to be able to express his talent. Still, don't go thinking that Ja alone was carrying all of the load, as every single piece on that squad was good enough to bring to the team a win. The best example of this is when on the 2nd of December 2021, the Grizzlies would go on to have one of the best single-game performances in NBA history as they would beat the Thunder by record margin 73-point difference in a 152-79 win. 12 Grizzlies players scored in that game, and to make it even more crazy, Ja didn't play. This success would be limited to the regular seasons though, as they would first get eliminated by the Warriors in the 2nd round of the 2022 playoffs, before falling to the Lakers in the 1st round of the 2023 ones. And in both times, it just so happened that it was a team with seasoned veterans that got them down. Because on the biggest stage, no matter how talented you are, experience primes on everything. And when you are going against a winner like Steph Curry or LeBron James in your first playoff appearance, there's not much that you can do except accept your fate. Everything seemed to be going perfectly for this team, and with the addition of the 2021 Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart, the sky seemed to be the ceiling for the team. Unfortunately, things just didn't go as planned for them as expected. Let's get the most obvious thing out of the way: the Ja Morant situation. Despite having everything offered to build a successful future and become a superstar of this multi-billion-dollar league, Ja would decide to follow his own fantasies and cause his downfall. This all started when he was seen in an Instagram live stream having fun in a strip club. This in itself isn't really enough to warrant any significant problems. I mean, James Harden is famous for doing the same, but he never had any real issues with that. What caused the drama was that it was in Denver, just after a game against the Nuggets, and most importantly, we could see Ja flashing a gun. The NBA world was taken by storm and Ja was immediately suspended until an investigation was completed. I mean, this not only went against every single conduct guidelines that the NBA had for their players and their superstars, but it also raised many questions. Was the gun Ja's property? How did he get it across states? Was it on the team's plane? Luckily for him, the police investigation would come out empty-handed. After a public apology from Ja, multiple discussions with the NBA commissioner, and a promise that he wouldn't do it again, he was allowed to play again. The thing is that if the story ended there, we wouldn't be here talking about it. And just a few weeks afterward, he would be seen again with a gun in another live stream. This was enough to make Silver angry, which would net Ja a lengthy 25-game suspension to start the 23-24 season. Still, with everything that we talked about before, Memphis squad should be good enough to hold on until he comes back, right? Well, if it had been the same one as before, they could have had a small hope. First off, injuries just didn't spare the team. They lost their veteran presence and their main rebounder, with Steven Adams having to undergo season-ending knee surgery this offseason, and Brandon Clark's Achilles injury will leave them without one of their best off-the-bench scoring specialists. The Grizzlies front office is also one of the reasons that they have reached these lows. What team would let two of the players with the most minutes in a season go away just like that? Well, that's Memphis apparently. After their 2023 playoffs loss, they put all of the blame on one player, and that's Dillon Brooks. Now, don't get me wrong, his trash talking might really have pushed the Lakers to play even harder. And it's not like he was playing well either, but to put the blame on a single player is kinda low. Anyway, they would put out their now infamous statement that he will not be brought back under any circumstance. Still, he would get picked up on a $20 million a year contract by the Rockets, with whom he is having a true renaissance. Next up, we have that Marcus Smart trade because one of the pieces that they had to give away was their point guard, Tyus Jones. As their floor general, he was the central dynamo that helped their offense take shape. And while Marcus Smart is indeed a significant evolution on the defensive side of things, he's just not enough to cover the offensive hole that has been left behind. All of this was left in the hands of their coach, Tyler Jenkins, who had the mission to make something out of nothing, which is just impossible when you don't have the necessary pieces to win. And so they continue their downfall, being at the bottom in the West Conference. Ja Morant is absolutely right, he didn't really have a problem with the West. To give you an idea, no team ever made the playoffs in NBA history after a start so bad. Still, it seems like the Grizzlies fans still have some hope, as they are eagerly waiting for Ja's comeback in December to hopefully get out of this hole. Still, what do you guys think? Will they be able to make it? Or should they just call this season over and tank in the hope of a good draft pick? That's the dilemma that the team is facing, and so I would love to hear your opinion on it down in the comments below.